Welcome back, everybody, to Murph Codes. I told you we'd be doing this a little bit later today, and here we are. Web development. Everything you run into on the internet, it all starts here with simple little old HTML. I first learned HTML 6th grade, the summer immediately following 6th grade. There was a local college that had a summer program for kids going into high school, and I needed something to do that summer. So, me and a couple of friends, we signed up. We enrolled in some various courses. They allowed you, each summer, you could take 2 weeks of 2 different courses that they taught. And that first week, I took HTML and theater, because I knew where I was going in life. And let's see, that was 25-ish, 26 years ago. It was a long time ago. It's a long dang time ago. A lot has changed since then. HTML is now HTML5. It's come up in the world. Back when I first learned it, doing fanciful layouts on your website meant that you were putting everything in a table and setting the height and widths of your rows and columns to get your content in the right spot. Nobody does it that way anymore, and thank God, because that way was an absolute mess. However, some things have not changed about web development. HTML and JavaScript are still very much necessary. Cascading style sheets are a little newer. They came along after I started learning about HTML, because they took the stylization out of HTML and they put it into this other thing and made it so that the appearance and style, the colors, the fonts, all of that was handled by a separate language. And that may seem confusing at first, but believe me, it is so much better that way. So much better. So, we're going to start at the beginning. We're going to start with HTML, which is how we define the structure of our web pages. Just the structure. What goes in it? What's the content of our page? Then we will move on to CSS, where we will learn how to take that content and give it some pizzazz, give it a little style, make it look nice. However, I gotta warn you, I have zero good sense when it comes to color coordination, style, any of that. I'm terrible at art. Photography, I'm okay because it happens. I capture it. That's how it works. Creating it, whole different story. But I do know the rules. I do know the language. I know how it all works, and I can get you there. You'll have to rely on your own good sense, though, whether or not what I'm telling or what I'm doing looks good or not, and how you can improve on it by making it look better, because you'll know how to make it look better, because you'll know the rules, because I'll have taught you the rules. Then, after we learn a bit of CSS, we'll hop into JavaScript. JavaScript is where your web pages become dynamic and interactive. Well, more interactive than dynamic. Dynamic is more of a server-side thing, and after we get a firm grip on front-end development, we'll work on back-end development, where we take a look at some server-side stuff. And for that, though, we'll have to get a little crazy. I'll have to walk you through probably how to set up your own server. It's been a while since I've had to do that, but I used to make Linux boxes for fun, just to throw up an Apache server with PHP on it and tinker around. We're not going to worry about building a server just yet. For our front-end needs, all we need is a place to host our page, and any place, honestly, will do just fine. I'm using my own server, which is why the address here is localhost. All of that is contained here in my www root folder. If I open up this document, which is right here, I can make changes here. And when I refresh this, as you can see there, my content has changed. So, this is my own computer is running a web server. How did I set that up? You go in here, and we're going to look for Internet Information Services. Now, this is just Windows features. Expand that. Turn on the web management and World Wide Web services. Alright, console is alright, but mostly what you want are these. Common HTTP features, HTTP being the protocol that ships your HTML code to the web browsers that visit your server, delivering the information from your pages so that other people's web browsers can render that information in the style and form that you have created. I have some CGI on there that's so that I can run PHP scripts later. Don't have to worry about that for now. I don't recommend actually doing any of this yourself until you know what you're doing, and this will mainly come in handy for the back end. But this is just to show you what I'm doing, how I'm running this stuff on my computer, because I'm not going to. I'm not going to be hopping onto a web host to show you how to do all that. I'm already doing that myself. I've already got that set up. But since you're going to need some place to host yours, you have a couple of options. W3 Schools is a handy reference and resource tool for learning HTML, CSS, JavaScript, all of that stuff. I've used it a lot. It's changed over the years. It's started off rough, but it's greatly improved. And recently, they added this website. And yes, it's genuinely free. You enter in an email address, they give you a little domain. I'm already logged in. I have one space. That's fine. Mine is at https://murphstrange.w3spaces.com. Yours will be different depending upon what your username and such is. So go ahead and set yourself up with one. Not really anything there for mine. Here you can add files, folders, you can upload files. This will be handy. You'll want to just do it from, your documents or whatever. So, that's how you'll get your files up into your hosting space. Feel free to save them on your computer. You can open them in a web browser. As for what editor to be using, if you have a Windows computer and you have Notepad, just basic Notepad, you legit have everything you need. Like, I'm not even kind of kidding about that. Now, in order to get the files to open, you have to go here to All Files. There we go. It is the exact same text. It is the exact same code. The only difference here is when you go to save it, go save as, change this to all files, make sure to put a .html at the end so web browsers understand it's an HTML file. And Notepad will work for you. Now, I will say, Notepad doesn't come with all the bells and whistles that you're going to want if you're doing front-end code work kind of stuff. So if you find yourself doing this on a fairly regular-ish basis, or you just want something fancy to be able to write with that color coordinates and can even like autofill in some of the stuff, give you little drop downs with the various options that it thinks you might be going for, really gives you all of the fun stuff that a good text editor should have. My recommendation, and you do not need to take my recommendation. However, I will not be able to answer questions on anything other than my own. And this is what I use. Visual Studio Code. Now, do not get this confused with Visual Studio like 2019 or 2020 or 2022 or whatever they're up to right now. Visual Studio is something else. You're looking for the blue ribbon, Visual Studio Code. You can download this for any platform. It's fairly lightweight. It should work on pretty much any computer with at least 4 gigabytes of RAM. If you're not running with 4 gigabytes of RAM, what are you doing with your life? Um, if you're trying to follow along on a mobile device, you can still participate. There are plenty of options on the Google Play Store. Just type in, you know, uh, code editor, hit search, find one that looks like it's going to be something you like. Get familiar with it, figure out how to use it, get to playing with it. Otherwise, just find a text editor. Any text editor. Literally, any text editor. They don't even have to be fancy. You remember Idle? You remember Idle? You want to see something cool about Idle? Idle is legit just a text editor. You can write your HTML in Idle. So, if you were following along in the Python uh, tutorial and you installed Python and you have this working, you can go ahead and you can keep using this if you want to. It's probably not going to be the best editor for writing HTML because like they weren't thinking of HTML when they developed this one. They weren't even thinking text documents. They were thinking Python. So you're not going to get highlighting, you're not going to get color coding of like keywords and stuff, which are just fancy bells and whistles. Your code will work the same regardless. Just so long as you type things correctly, you'll be fine. And don't worry, even if you type things wrong, that's kind of just part of being a coder, being a developer. You're going to make mistakes. But you just need something that can save in a text format that allows you to change the extension to the .html at the end. All right? If you can pull that off, you'll be doing fantastic. I do recommend Visual Studio Code because that's what I use. That's what I use for all of my web development. There are plenty of other options out there. This one is free. You do not have to buy anything. You don't have to pay anything. It's not a free with ads. No, it's just free. It's not a free trial. It's not going to pop up later saying your license has expired or anything. It is just free. You can even just use the code editor here. If you go new file, HTML, give it a name. We'll just go with new file. Create file. Click on that. And look at that. We are able to now code right here. Don't worry if you don't know what any of this means. You're not supposed to yet. It's not important for you to know what this means yet. But you can just type right here. So if you're using the free website hosting at W3 Schools, which if you find another web hosting that you like better, go ahead and use it. I'm not going to berate you for your choice. However, know that I'm not going to be able to answer questions on your web hosting because I don't know about your web hosting. I am not familiar with everybody's web hosting. I can answer questions about my own web hosting because I'm hosting my own. I'm at localhost. Like, I don't know what your address will be. I don't know how to fix any of the errors that may pop up as a result of your web hosting or anything. So, if you run into issues there, that's going to be a problem you'll have to figure out for yourself, and I'm hoping that you'll be smart enough and patient enough to Google the problem and find a solution. Okay? If you followed my Python tutorial, you saw a lot of me Googling stuff. Saw a lot of me looking up the answer on how to do things. That's a part of web development as well as any other code work that you're going to do. If you don't know, feel free to try to find an answer in the search engine. It's what it's there for. Most of my education, code-wise, comes from doing exactly that. Because, yeah, I started back in the 6th grade taking a 2-week course on HTML, but, again, HTML was different back then. You may hear reference to them old GeoCities pages with the GIFs and the spinny animated skulls and flickering flames and whatnot, and the really ridiculous Angel Fire websites. That's the era I am from. Okay? I kept up on mine. I kept up. If you can't find it online, I mean, feel free to shoot me a question. Hop in my Discord. The link will be at the end in the post video credits, and it's also in the description. The About Me on my Twitch channel. I've dropped that link everywhere, so feel free to hop in there if you have questions. I'm more than happy to answer questions, but I can't answer questions about your text editor because I don't know every single text editor out there. I can't answer questions about your web host because I don't know every web host out there. I don't know how they do it. I don't know what sort of technologies you're working with. But if it's about the actual code itself, I can help you. And I'm happy to answer those questions. So anyway, either get yourself set up with something like the W3 Schools W3 Spaces, so you have a place to host your files, and either use their built-in text editor, or download a text editor, upload your files to W3 Spaces or whatever hosting you're using after you've written them. If you don't upload the files, your website will not change. Okay? You need to upload the files. So we have this, but then if we also do... What was that, newfile.html? Yep, newfile.html. There's nothing there. But we can do view page source, and there's the code that I just wrote. The exact code. By the way, that's a nifty little trick for learning how somebody has done something. If you see something that you like in code that somebody else has wrote, right-click on the page, view page source, you will see the source code of their page. And then you can just, after you've figured out how to write code, you should be able to decipher what's going on here. And you'll be able to pick out the pieces that you like. And you'll be able to use them in your own code. Stealing from other developers is almost a way of life for people who write code. Getting the answer from Stack Overflow, almost always a thing somebody has done somewhere. However, there's a way to do it right and there's a way to do it wrong. The way to do it wrong is to have no idea what you're doing, not understand the code that you're using, and just plug in stuff until something works. Don't do that. Don't do that. If you don't understand the code that you're copying and pasting, you should not be copying and pasting it. You absolutely should not do that. You only want to copy and paste code that you understand. And I don't mean, oh, I understand that this is the result I should expect. No. You should understand every line, every keyword, every variable, all of it. The only thing that it should be answering for you is, oh, that's how you go about that. It shouldn't leave you questioning, okay, what does that tag do? I don't know. I'm just going to use it. Don't do that. Don't ever do that. Okay? If you don't know what something does, don't use it. Okay, so let's break this down a little bit. What do we got here? This first line, the capitalized doc type with the exclamation point in front of it and the angle brackets. First of all, in HTML, anything that's considered a keyword that designates a part of the document, a piece of the structure, will show up between these angle brackets. Okay, so like head between angle brackets, body between angle brackets. And you notice how there's a start and an end tag. The end tag is usually going to have this little slashy mark in here. That's how you know it's an end tag. Here's a good example here. Can you guess what goes right here between these between this and this? Can you guess what goes in this space? If you guessed that it's the title for the website, give yourself a hand. You're a smart cookie. Yeah. This keyword right here, title, just denotes that, hey, we're marking the title. We'll mark the beginning, and we'll mark the end, and the text in between is what is going to show up on the tab, and when you bookmark a page, that's what'll show up there. So I'm gonna go with some very generic BS kind of crap here as far as the web page itself, because I'm just going with example garbage. I'm going to unpin this tab so we can actually see. Up here on the tab, you see where it says localhost? Now it says my website, because I titled it my website. This goes in the header, the head of your web page. This is all the head. What is the head of your HTML document? It is the information we're passing to the web browser that is not actually going to be displayed as content in this part. This white viewport window thing where the actual document is, where the actual page is, that stuff is going between these body tags. This is the open body tag. This is the closed body tag. Everything that goes between them is content. The head, information for the web browser, so that it knows what to expect with this page, with this document. Body, the actual document itself. The HTML tags are just the container that groups the two together. The doc type HTML just lets the web browser know what to expect as far as what the rest of this file contains. Okay? Are you still with me? Doc type used to be a much more complicated thing. It's a document type declaration, and as of HTML5, the type we declare is just HTML. We don't have to get any more fancy than that currently. But, oh, also it's not technically an HTML tag, but it's, let me see if I can find the old... Here we go. Alright, so HTML5 and above, this is what you can get away with. Doc type HTML. Pretty simple, right? Well, before HTML5, it was HTML 4.01. You would have to memorize all this garbage and put that in there. Or all of this garbage. Or all of this garbage. And, heaven help you if you screwed it up. XHTML was a kind of HTML that came out around that same time. And as you can see here, it required a very similar long, weird tag. You no longer have to use these. Like, if you decided to get real into web development and needed to write something that was going to be particularly had to be particularly compatible with, like, Windows 95 systems with the, Internet Explorer 6 or something, and you had to keep it at HTML4 or less, then you would want to concern yourself with these. But you don't have to worry about that anymore. This is the only tag you need to worry about on modern systems with modern browsers, whether it's a mobile phone, a desktop, or a laptop. Your HTML files should just start with that. Okay? So, if you're the kind of person who writes templates for your code work, and I recommend doing that, especially for HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, because you're going to see a lot of the same things show up on a lot of different pages. So you may as well have a template set aside that gets you kicked off and headed in the right direction. Alright, so, technically not HTML, not an HTML tag, just an information tag to let the browser know that the rest of the file is HTML. I'm going to take this out for a second. It doesn't really do anything important, don't worry. This is the HTML tag that tells the web browser everything between this and this is going to be HTML. You can expect that to be the language we're speaking. Now, inside of your tags, you'll often see attributes. That's what this is. This part here, lang equals en-us. What this means is the language that our HTML document will be using is English, United States. To figure out the language code you'll be using, just go ahead and Google it. If you're not in the United States, you can use a different language. You can use Swedish, you can use French, you can use Spanish, you can use, you can use whatever language is for your region. You would just need to find the language code and replace this with that. I'm in the United States, and I only know English because I'm an uneducated American. So, that's what I'm using. You don't need the US on there. This is also acceptable. This is also totally acceptable. No language attribute at all. Totally acceptable. Highly recommended to have, though, especially if you're trying to write valid HTML, and by valid HTML, I mean HTML that validates. There is an HTML validator. Here at the W3 Consortium, these are the guys that basically decide what is HTML. They're the ones that set the rules. They're the ones that decide the standards. If there's going to be a change, they're the people you go to. There are tutorials you can find here. There are all kinds of cool stuff. There is, though... See if I can find it. Probably spelt it wrong. Here we go. The validator. After you get your website up and running, get it up on your host, paste the full URL to it, hit check. Here we go. It's going to go through and it's going to tell you what points you're missing for your code to be technically valid. Now keep in mind, code that isn't valid will still work. Alright? As you can see here, we haven't declared the character encoding. So it just defaulted to using Windows 1252. I'm going to want to change that. Like, it's fine. It's not going to break things. Because if we go to my page, like, there's nothing there. Nothing's broken. But, like, there's nothing in the body. There's nothing in the head. There's nothing there. So, we haven't broken anything. But, it's technically not fully valid. So, how do we declare character encoding? How do we solve this first issue? That's where a meta tag comes in. This first one, anyway. There's going to be a few different meta tags. So let's just go ahead and edit this. We're going to go ahead and drop that in there. We're going to save that. Now, meta tags don't have an open and close tag. They don't have a separate open and close. You'll close the tag in the same angle bracket set that you opened it in. It's a single self-contained tag. Alright, so there isn't like a... You know, there isn't any of this nonsense. I usually denote any self-closing tag by putting the slash just before the last bracket. It's not necessary. But it does help me remember that, oh yeah, I don't need to worry about a closing tag here, because this is a self-closing tag. There are going to be a few tags that don't have an open and close and are just all self-contained. So, with meta, that's one of them. What is meta? Meta is like the, you know, the information about the information. Alright? And the big deal with meta tags is all about the attributes. It's all about the attributes with meta tags. This particular meta tag, we're setting a character set attribute of UTF-8. So we're going to hit save. That's already saved. Let's go back to our validator. Let's check that again. Hey, look at that. One of our errors went away. We still have this problem of element head is missing a required instance of the child element title. What does that mean? When you write HTML that's valid, between the open and close head, you kind of want to have these. You remember that tag that tells you what the words on the tab are going to be for your web page? It's required. That one is required. So, let's go back into our page here. Now, how are you going to know when a tag needs an open and close tag? How are you going to know when it's a self-closing tag? Practice or look it up. If you're not quite sure if you're about to use a tag properly, just Google it. I still have to Google link tags sometimes. Not the hyperlink tag, not the anchor tag, which we'll get into in a bit, but the link tag, which ties the style sheets to the page. Also, script tags, I sometimes have to look up whether or not I'm using those correctly and setting all of the proper attributes within those. But this is how HTML is formatted. There's an open angle bracket. There's the keyword, which is the element. And then there will be usually an attribute. Not always. As you can see here, body, we're not using an attribute there. The attributes are usually optional. However, there are instances like with this meta tag where the attribute is everything. Like, yeah, the attribute is everything in this one because without the attribute there, that meta tag is meaningless. Another really good use of... Look. Make sure I'm doing this right. Here we go. Okay. Here's some other examples of meta tags. There's the character encoding meta tag that's required to make your stuff pass a validation check. There's also the description. And here you can see we're using 2 attributes, and each of those attributes has a different value to them. So let's talk a little bit more about that. Name equals... It's keyword, keywords, keywords. Yeah. I am always having to look stuff up. Alright, and again, you don't need it. As you can see, they don't have the closing slash on theirs. I put it on mine. It's entirely up to you unless you end up working with a group of people, in which case follow whatever they decide is going to be their style as a group. Okay? Because sometimes if you're working with a team, they'll have rule sets for this sort of thing. And it's just to make it look better. It's, you know, it's not necessarily going to break anything. Don't worry about what these new tags are all about. We will get to those in just a moment. Okay. Reload that. Okay, now we have some content. Now we have some content on our page. It's going to make all the difference. Not really. It's not going to make much difference. All right, so we hit check on this thing again. Oh, did I put a closing tag? I put a closing tag. Yep. That's not supposed to be a closing tag. That's supposed to be an open tag. Check it again. There we go. Completed. No errors. Perfect. Perfectly valid code. Alright. So what's going on here? Meta. We set the character set or the character encoding for the page. As you can see here, there's a whole list of different acceptable values. I recommend UTF-8 because it's a very universal sort of character encoding. If your code if your code requires characters not found in UTF-8, then use whatever's handy for your character needs for the content of your page. Okay? And hopefully you'll understand what I mean, because in whatever language you're using, the characters you require, you'll know what kind of encoding you need for those characters. I'm using basic English. We don't have a whole lot of weird little symbols and, dots and things above any of our letters, so UTF-8 works fine. I don't know if UTF-8 works great for umlauts and whatever else you might need, but from my understanding, it's probably there somewhere. And if it's not there, you can just switch to whatever encoding has it, and then you'll be just fine. This next meta tag, name attribute set to keywords. This is going to tell the browser, and also any search bots, any spider bots that happen to come across this page, what keywords this page ought to show up in search results for, essentially. It's recommended to use 3 to 5. You don't want to go more than 5. In fact, you should try to keep it the fewer the better. And honestly, in order to show up in like the first few pages, this is what SEO, search engine optimization, is pretty much all about. These keywords, and also the description. Real real good description there, right? So, why is this one coming up a weird color? Oh, because I didn't close this one yet. There we go. Okay. Now, if this page were to show up in some search engine results, it's probably because somebody searched one of these code words. One of these keywords is what caused my page to show up. Admittedly, this page is going to be ranked probably on like page 9,538 or something because I don't have it linking to anything. It's not a popular page, not a lot of traffic gets routed through here. So I don't imagine my results. I'm certainly not showing up on the first page if someone types in stuff at Google. All right? Let me show you what I mean. Yeah, see, I'm not showing up anywhere near any of this. Okay? I don't expect to. I probably won't even be on like the 10th page or anything. I'm going to be like literally, if I even show up in Google search results, I don't know if W3 Spaces shows up in search results. Yeah, no, these pages don't even show up. So, but anyway, the keywords, if you actually had something hosted somewhere and the spider bots crawled it and indexed it, the keywords are going to be what tell the search engine uh, what kind of thing people should be listing or looking for them to run into your page. All right? Be choosy about your keywords. All right? You'll see some tutorials on search engine optimization where it's like, oh, here's how you can find, you know, results that, are being searched, but there aren't a lot of results, which means you're going to have a higher chance of being, in one of the first couple of pages. And here's how to get to that first page using those keywords and blah, blah, blah. Yeah, that's all well and good, but if it's got you putting in keywords that have nothing to do with the content that's on the actual page, you're doing it wrong. Okay? These keywords should actually have something to do with the page. Alright? The description should be an adequate description of the page. If you really want to show up in good search results, what you're going to want to do is make sure that you're linking to content that directs traffic back to you. So, like, if you know some people who are also web developers building pages, and those pages are, of a similar sort of content, ask them if they'd like to, share links. A lot of pages have links to other pages that, they'll be happy to include that stuff. Down here, in footers, usually a pretty good spot to find stuff like that. You might see on somebody else's page, not necessarily W3 Schools page, but you might see links to, you know, other things, you know, other forums, other partners or affiliates or whatever. It's a good place to get linked if they're not using it as a sitemap. Otherwise, sometimes they'll have, like, over here on the side, on the shoulder, there might be space for ads, but there might also be space for, you know, oh, hey, check out this other website that's, you know, from a guy we know who's doing good work over there, too. There's almost always space for links to be put in to direct people to your website, but also be open to allowing other people to be linked from your website so that you can direct traffic back to them. Okay? Author, obviously, you're going to put your own name in there because you want to be able to tell people who wrote this. For me, it was Murph Strange because I am Murph Strange. I think. Pretty sure. Last I checked, anyway. Let's reload that. There we go. Alright. Now, I did not use the best choice for keywords. My description is very not great, but I'm also not actually aiming to make a page that's going to get a lot of traffic here because W3 spaces, they're not, you know, like, you'll be limited on the number of requests and stuff that can be tolerated before they're like, okay, look, you're getting too much traffic, we're going to have to start charging you. So, that's a thing. Either they're gonna start cutting off your traffic, or they're going to ask you to upgrade. It's voluntary to upgrade, but oh, what is it like? Yeah, you get 500 requests a month. I've used 5 of them. Just with that little bit we've done. So, you know, meh. Of the space I have available, I've used 1 kilobyte of 100 megabytes. We're hardly scratching the surface here with my page. My data transfer. When someone visits your page to download that page, it gets transferred to them. So you don't want to write super ginormous pages that just have a lot of content for people to download because you're going to eat right through that. Also, you're going to eat right through this if your pages are super huge. Don't be constantly refreshing your page. You're going to go through that quickly. Anyway, that's the reason why I'm doing localhost also, and because I can. But, like, there's usually going to be some kind of restrictions. Now, if this is your first page that you're making as just a way to learn how to make a web page, that W3 Spaces hosting is probably going to be fine. I'll be quite surprised if you actually hit your limit. If you do find yourself hitting your limit and you need a better host, GitHub! That's not what I'm looking for. It is GitHub, though. Just trying to find the... There we go. And that's really not what I'm looking for either. Anyway, what you can do on GitHub, even though they don't really market it terribly well, is you can create a repository that is essentially a free website. I'd probably need my authenticator to sign in to show you mine, but I can visit it. This is a website I made like a long freaking time ago. It's very out of date. It shows that I'm still working with freecodecamp.org. I've got a few of my projects there. A lot of it is actually just ridiculous little things that I made, and some of it's the nonsense projects they have you build as projects at Free Code Camp. When did I last update this? I don't even know. It's probably been at least a year. But anyway, yeah. This is a repository that I have saved on GitHub. I go into the settings. I enable it as a web page as long as it's got an index HTML in the main folder. It should be fine. It should work. It'll work as a web page. You can upload your code there. I don't know what the restrictions are for being hosted on GitHub, but pretty much every repository has the option of having a website so that people can go there, get information about the project without having to look at the repository information side of the website. So, yeah. That's another option if you run out of space with, like, W3 hosting. So anyway, where were we? Yes. Bringing us up to speed here. How about you actually go to the actual page? There we go. So I don't have to retype the whole thing. There we go. Okay. So now we're back to looking at stuff as it's hosted on my page. There we go. And again, don't worry about any tags you don't understand the meaning of yet. We'll cover all of this soon. I promise. No change there. Good. Okay, so feel like we've covered the meta tags fairly well, except for this one right here. What is going on with this? Well, technically this should be one line. It's just it kind of extends a bit far. So this is a meta tag that helps with our CSS later. Trying to think where to even begin with this one. Okay, so the viewport is all of this white space that you see in the browser window. All right, when I hit full screen, viewport's bigger. When I collapse it down, it's smaller. If I stretch the window, we're changing the shape of that white space. With this meta tag, we're giving it an initial scale of 1 and setting the width at the device width. It's kind of hard to explain that all just yet. It'll make some sense when we get into CSS a bit and we have to worry about what devices people are going to be looking at our web page with. And by with, I mean W-I-T-H, not W-I-D-T-H. Because you can go to the same page on a mobile phone or a desktop or a laptop or a tablet, and each of these things has a different screen size. Each of these things has a different browser size, different maximum, different minimum. Like, most people surfing the web on their phone are going to be in full screen mode. People on desktops might not be in full screen mode. A lot of people do run in full screen mode all the time. I rarely run in full screen mode. I'm usually windowed, usually have like 18 things going on in the background. So, like, we're going to want some flexibility in the layout and the appearance of our web page. So, as you recall, the HTML defines the structure and the content of the page, but CSS tells us how it looks, and that's why it's going to be important when we get to CSS what this meta tag is. For now, all you have to do is copy exactly this line. Include that in the head of your HTML exactly as it's written here. No need to make any changes. In fact, go like that. These top 3 are required. This right here, you can change to whatever you want. This attribute you can change to whichever encoding makes sense to you. As you can see, my text editor is even using UTF-8. I can change the encoding at any time with my text editor, but I just stick with UTF-8. But we need some kind of char set for the character set meta tag. We need the viewport set to the device width. This will help with our CSS making things the right size. And we need to title our web page. These 3 meta tags are optional. Are they handy? Absolutely. But they're not necessary. You know, you can skip these three if you want to and just stick with those three. I include these three because it gives a bit more information. All right. Now, later on, we're going to add two more lines of code to our head. Our head element here. We're going to add two more lines. Those lines are going to be the lines to link the style page that will tell our web browser how this page should look, and our script page, which will tell our web browser what JavaScript code is going to be needed for the interactive parts of the page. All right? So just know we will be coming back to add a bit more to this part. But for now, this is a basic template for all of your web pages. Just, HTML, throw a language attribute in there, Google the language attribute you want to use. If you're in the United States and you speak English, that's the one you want to go with. If you're in another country and you speak a different language, it'll be a language dash country, some kind of abbreviation thing. Google it, you'll have no problem. But like Britain and the UK, I believe it's that. I think otherwise it's that. I'm not sure what Australia is. I used to know it. I don't anymore. Let's see. Otherwise, that does it for the head section. Okay? We don't need to worry about that anymore. Let's come down here to the body section. This is a header tag. H1 and H2 are headings. Not header, headings. We can go with H3. We can go with H4. H5. Whoop. Wrong button. What are these tags for? They're to add headings to the actual content within the body. You will not use these tags in the head. They're headings, yes, but they do not belong in the head of the document. They belong in the body of the document because they're headings for content. The content of the document always goes in the body. Alright? But as you can see here, we've got 6 levels of headings, each one getting progressively smaller. You can style these with CSS. So, like, you can make heading 6 larger than your normal standard text, which is what this is right here. But as you can see, the standard format, H1 is the largest, H2 slightly smaller, H3 just a little bit smaller, H4 smaller yet, H5 even smaller, H6 the smallest. And they're all bolded, just naturally bolded because they're titles. They're headings. The way I've seen it written is you usually only want one H1 tag to a page, and that's going to be basically the title for the whole page. You can use like H2 and H3 to subdivide the sections and title the different sections if you want, and so on and so forth. And that's why there's so many levels. There's no hard fast rule that says you even have to use H1 tags, but they're handy. These are also considered block elements. Let's take a look at our page here again. Notice how each one of these is a separate line. Sure, I have it in here where each one is a separate line. But notice putting them even on the same line, it doesn't make them on the same line up here. Why is that? Because the H1 tag, the H1 element, consumes the entire width in the layout, and the next element will be underneath it. And since this one also is a heading tag, that's also going to take up the entire width, even though the content of the element doesn't stretch the full width. The element itself takes up that whole width. Okay? We can change that behavior later with CSS, but I want you to get into your mind what's going on here. And the best way to understand that is when we get to CSS, some things will be what's known as an inline element, which means it just sits within the flow of text naturally. Others are block elements, which means they're taking up that entire space. So like from this border to this border, no matter how far we stretch this window, and even though the content within the element itself is only this little bit of text, the element itself, while containing that little bit of text, still extends from edge to edge. And it forces the next element to drop down to the next line. And this one has that exact same behavior. This right here is a paragraph tag. And guess what? It has the same behavior. It's going to make a paragraph. And you've seen a paragraph in a document. It extends from border to border. And then the next paragraph, or the next heading, or the next whatever, will be underneath that. That's how HTML documents flow. We can alter that behavior, like I said, with CSS. And when we get to CSS, we're going to cover fully how we can do that. And it will be quite cool. But for now, we're just focusing on the content of our document and setting up the structure of the page. Okay? We're not worried about the appearance. Just that the elements we want are there and they're marked properly. Alright? So, that's what we've got going on here. Now you might be thinking to yourself, okay, this is all well and good for getting text onto a page. But this is a little boring. Okay? I've seen web pages that have links and images and video and forms and all kinds of stuff. When are we getting to that? Well, right now. I think I did that right. This is our first example of an inline tag. Alright? When we drop one of these bad boys, it is not going to extend from one edge to the other edge and force everything below it. It is just going to sit right in line with the text we already have. Let me show you what I'm talking about. See that? Sits right in line with the text that was already there. It is now part of that paragraph element, blends smoothly with the rest of the text. I spelt Google wrong. Alright, so when I click on this, notice that it opened a new tab, with Google. And it'll do that every time I click on it. Let me break down what's going on here. Okay. This is called an anchor tag. I know, kind of confusing because there is such a thing as a link tag, but on the developer side of things, we don't think of them as links. We think of them as hyperlinks, and we're anchoring them to the page. Because of course we are. That sounds so stupid. I don't know who came up with that, but that's the way it's been since the dawn of time, and it's ridiculous, but we do it anyway. So it starts with an A, just an A, and that stands for anchor. Pretty sure it stands for anchor. The attribute here, this href, is hyperlink reference. And the value is the page we want it to point to. And we're going to get into some details about the acceptable values here. Because depending on the location of the page, sometimes you want to type out the full address. Sometimes you can get away with just a file name. Like if I had another HTML file here to link to. Whoop. Helps if I can spell. Yeah, we want to be able to do that. not gonna go full bore with all of the extra stuff here, but I do want this one, and instead of just trying to remember it every dang time, we're just gonna copy it. There we go. All right, now let's add a link to that one. Okay, so we have our link to Google. Goodle. All right, we also have the second page. We click on that. Hey, look. It takes us to that second page that I just wrote 2 seconds ago. But let's take a look at the difference here. Notice how we don't start with the HTTP. We don't have, the full google.com. I don't have to put the localhost /second.html. Why do I get away with just the file name here? Well, hey, Tom Bomb. Thanks for stopping in. Sorry I didn't see that you were talking to me till just now, because I was focused. Hyper-focused. Anyway, the reason we get away with just the file name is because the location of what we have here as a value for our hyperreference attribute is relative. Okay? We can use a standard, like if we wanted to go up one directory, if this was contained within a resources file, and that folder was in this directory here with the index HTML, and this page was in that folder, we could access it that way. If it's in your domain, you can get away with this kind of thing. If the page you're looking for is on a different domain, you're going to want to type out the domain. The whole www whatever. I know I didn't use www here, but if you type google.com, it takes you to Google. So, that works. But also, that's probably better. HTML is a little hard on the brain at midnight, yeah. So, yeah, I don't blame you. I don't blame you. You can always check this out on the VOD later if you want to get any pointers and tips from me. It'll all be here. I mean, maybe not everything, but because we're just doing a real basic tutorial here. But, yeah. So anyway, that's proper use of the hyperreference attribute, the href. Oh, I should probably change that so it actually directs to the correct page. Notice I didn't put a target blank there. This is only necessary if you want to have it open in a new page, a new tab. So, notice that behavior here. I click on this one, it redirects this tab to that other page. If I click on this link, it'll open this in a new tab. Okay? So, I don't recommend doing the new tab for everything, but if you have a link that will, clicking on it will take your visitor away from your page to somewhere else, consider throwing this in there. Because they might not be done at your page. And all this does, that's a target attribute with an underscore blank value that just opens a new tab, a blank tab, and then it directs that tab to whatever the address is that you put there. If it's a link to something on your own page, I don't recommend doing that because that kind of behavior, it tends to open like 100 different tabs, and people get really annoyed with that. I know I get really annoyed when I'm on Twitch and I'm bouncing back and forth between like the video manager and my channel and editing my about and whatnot, and by the time I'm done I have like 16 tabs open, all of them for Twitch, and I can't figure out which one is still playing my last video because I didn't mute them all. Yeah. Don't be that kind of person. If it's opening another page within your own website, don't have it open a new tab unless there's a very good reason for it. If you're directing people away from your page, go ahead and have that open in a new tab. But that's only if you can safely assume they're not done on your page. So, but that's links. That's how you add a link to your page. I'll show you later how to add color, how to change the color when you highlight the link, when you bring your mouse cursor over it, how to make it change color from when you click on it, how to make it so it's not just the standard blue and purple. Because you can change the color of all of that. You can change the fonts. You can make them bold when you're hovering over it if you want to. But all of that's CSS work. For now, we just want to make sure that they're on the page, and that's what that does. So, opening anchor tag, the text that is basically going to be the button that gets pressed, the underlined text that our user is going to click on, followed by a close anchor tag. And it would help if my code editor wasn't inputting random closing tags. There we go. Of course, it would probably also help if I wasn't sliding stuff around unnecessarily on it. Okay, so pretty simple, pretty basic. I mean, it doesn't cover the full usage of this href attribute and how we can get away with some other stuff, because you might see sometimes something like that, and you might be like, well, what the heck is that? What is going on there? You can set anchor tags that are basically just that. Let me see if I... I think it's this that I'm looking for. Yeah. Oh, ID. That's what I'm supposed to use, not name. Durr. See, like I said, I have to look stuff up all the time, too. And I've been doing this for over 25 years. All right, so we have the anchor. We have a unique identifier. That's what ID stands for. We're IDing this part of the page. Now we could do it like that. And oops. There we go. Notice this isn't a link. This isn't a clickable link. What it is an anchor. Hence the A. Now I'm going to get rid of this here, and we're going to add I think I'm doing this right. It has been a while since I have had to do this, but I think I've got this right. Now, it's not going to really do us much good if there's no need to scroll. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a bunch of these break and return tags. That's what the BR tag stands for. It's another one of those that it's a self-closing tag. So normally when I do these, this is how I'm doing them. But if you want to leave the space slash out of there, both are totally legal. Like, this by itself is a legit legal tag. It's totally fine. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. But what I'm doing here is I'm just trying to create some space so that I can demonstrate for you what this does. Okay, that should be enough lines. So save that, hop back over here, hit refresh. Notice I have a scroll bar here now. If I scroll, okay. We have a back to top. If I click this, it jumps back to the top of the page. In fact, it jumps to this title here. Why? Because that's what I've ID'd as the top of the page. Oh, that's how you do navigating within the page. That is how navigating within your HTML document works. It's a nifty little tool. It's great, but like also you can do things like where you take that kind of thing further. And now remember, each one of these BR tags is literally just like hitting the enter button in a word processor. It just drops down another line, another line, another line, another line. So that's all that is. Don't worry about that. Don't stress about that. There we go. Now, assuming this works the way that I think it does. When we click this this second HTML link on our page here, so we scroll down, we come to the bottom. Okay, if we hit back to the top, that jumps to the top. Great. Normally, if we hit the second page, it just takes us to the top of that second page. But now, I see you took a shortcut. We instantly navigated to the bottom because that is where we put our anchor tag. And notice we didn't have to scroll. All of this scrolling. Notice the little box as it tries to climb because I put a whole lot of break and return tags in there. Normally you wouldn't do that. You would just actually have this full of content before you needed like a return to top kind of link. But you can use that. There we go. A good example of the kind of place where you see that get used. Let's just pick any random article here. Let's go with West Sumatra. Tell me about West Sumatra. There we go. Okay. It doesn't. Here we go. Notice how there's this little contents box here. Now, if I want to find out about demographics, I click on that, and I'm still in the same page, but it has dropped me down to demographics. That's how you get links to do that. You ID a part of the page with the anchor tag. You give it a unique ID, and it has to be unique. You can't have, 6 or 7 things that are ID'd as top. You must decide, on one. And the other ones are like, other top, different top, not the same top, that kind of thing. I don't recommend getting too carried away with that. But you get the idea. Also, don't use spaces. I don't recommend using spaces in your ID names. But that's how you do different kinds of navigation. This is how internal within the same document navigation looks. This is how navigation to another page looks with the hashtag identifier after it is to navigate to a specific part of that page. Otherwise, if you leave this part off, it'll just go to that page and put you at the top of that page. This is how you navigate to a completely different domain to look at somebody else's page. And include this if you want to open that in a new tab. In fact, you can include this even in this one here if you wanted to make this just open a new tab for whatever reason. Whoop. That's not what I wanted to do. Let me fix that. That's an equals. So if we hit back to top now, it should open a new tab. What? Why didn't it open a new tab? I did save the file, didn't I? There it goes. Now it opens a new tab. I must not have saved it. Or it must not have loaded the new code just yet. So now it opens a new tab every time I try to navigate to the top of the page. I don't recommend that when navigating within the same page, because it's kind of a dick move to just keep opening tabs for your user. like I said, you want to have a good reason for doing that. And it's usually for when someone's navigating to a different page entirely, or if they're opening up, say, a very specific utility within your own page. That's when you would use it on your own page. A lot of banks that I've seen, when you log in and then you want to go do, like, transferring money from one account to another, uh, opening up the utility to move the money around will probably open up a new tab. And then when you're done, you just close it and you find yourself back at the accounts listings page, that kind of thing. Um, or when you're doing like a bill pay from your bank account, that might open in a new tab. And then closing that tab just drops you back into your regular bank account. Although in a lot of cases, those are done that way because those functions are actually provided by somebody else's web page. It's a service that they've basically shopped out to somebody else to handle, like Western Union or something. So anyway, you've learned a few different things. You've learned how to create some pretty basic HTML elements and structures and stuff. Let's we'll leave that in for now. We don't need to worry about it. This is, like I said, paragraph tags. You use those at the beginning and end of paragraphs. It kind of gives a little space between your paragraphs. Makes them appear as separate, so they don't just run into each other. Um, let's see. Where are we at for time? We're almost at 2 hours. So, the I think the final thing we're going to talk about is images. We are going to copy that. You know what? Let's copy both of these. There's the folder I want. And actually, you know what? I am going to create a folder that is for images within my web page here. All right. That is not what I wanted it to do. Can I get it to just copy the name? Copy path. There we go. Alright, we can take this down to there. Now, we are working on a Windows system, but when we're working with web servers, they all use the Linux file delimiter, file directory delimiter of Is that the backslash that goes that way, or is that the front slash? I don't. Whichever one is on the same key as the question mark in the United States. That's the one we're supposed to be using. The one that you're seeing on the screen now. Windows uses this slash for file directory delimitation. Linux uses this one, and Mac, I believe, does as well. And so do web servers. So the address protocol for all of your resources across the internet are going to use that kind of slash. The other slash really doesn't do much good. Probably is going to screw up the address, or it's a special character being used specifically for some purpose within the address. But anyway, this is supposed to be a tag. What are you doing? Okay. Couple of things. We are leaving out some important attributes here. But I wanted to show you what it looks like. The very basics. Okay. We have added an image to the bottom of our page. The same image that was the logo that I pulled off of the internet for the HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Free use, don't worry, it's just some clip art. Those logos are literally just the logos that are being used for those languages everywhere. You find them on book covers and whatnot. I got this image off of some free logos, freepnglogos.com or something like that. You can find a lot of free use images on the internet. Not every image is free use, though. So don't just go stealing other people's pictures and putting them on your website. It will get you in trouble. Make sure the images you use on your website that aren't your own, aren't pictures that you've taken yourself with a camera or created in some kind of software with your own two hands. Make sure you have credited where you got it, from who, and what permission was given. A lot of stuff has a Creative Commons license that you can just use the image. That's fine. You might still want to give credit, though. This is just some free clip art, though. Like, we don't have to credit anybody to use it. It's just, it's logos. Like, not even great, well-designed, super awesome logos, just standard logos. So, we're okay. Anyway, I wanted to show you how you can use W3 as a reference. So, for the image tag, SRC stands for source, and we've covered that. But what's this other stuff here? Well, these are the other things you need to include in your image tag. Now, it'll still display, and it displays just fine, but what you want to do is you want to be able to tell the web browser when it's going to load your page is going to tell me a size here? No, it's not going to tell me a size. I got to open it in something else. Properties. Details. There we go. There's our dimensions. Okay? You're going to want to know that. Width was what again? Uh, 1109. Hey, I spelled height correctly on the first try. I am so proud of myself. And yes, that's something to be proud of. 432. Now, we do this as a courtesy to the browser, because the browser has to set aside space for the images. Otherwise, as the images load, the page will jump. Or at least it used to. It used to be a lot worse. Now, things tend to load pretty quickly, most places. So, like, it's still common courtesy to include a width. Maybe not necessarily a height, but you want to tell the browser to set aside this much room for this picture. Okay? It doesn't really have much impact on it. Like, it doesn't change how the image is displayed or anything. But you can. Like, say we wanted to make this smaller. Go 550. 216. That's about a 50 and 50. Reduce the size quite a bit. I don't recommend that, though. There is a there's kind of a rule or an unwritten guideline that changing the size and appearance of things is the territory of CSS. Yes, we can do it in HTML, but should we? Not really. Not really. Images should basically be the size that they are in your HTML document. Resize them in whatever software you need to fit your page properly, but also understand this image is going to be on several different screens at several different sizes, so go with the largest size you want it to appear on the majority of screens it's likely to appear on. Like, the largest desktop monitors are going to be around like 30 some inches. 42 inches is kind of overkill. But you might find some people running around at like, 36-inch monitors, 32-inch monitors. I can't remember how big mine is, but I don't think it's nearly that. So, what was this? 1109? And this was 432? Yes. So a document with an image that size is okay. That's fine. It's kind of large, but like Scaling it down is going to be fine. Scaling it up is where we're going to run into problems. If it's that big, we're not going to need to scale upward. I mean, it's going to be a very weird situation, very limited case scenario here where we would have to scale this up for any reason. So, like, that size is tolerable. We're okay with that. So, the width and height to tell the browser, set aside this much space. The alt attribute specifies an alternate text for the image if for some reason the image cannot be displayed. You may have seen this. If your internet ever went out as a page was loading and like the majority of the content loaded but not all of the images had, you'd see a box and then in the corner there might be some text. You don't see it terribly often these days because a lot of the time the internet goes out and your browser's just like, oh, you've lost a connection, I'm not going to display the page at all. But we still want to use alt text, the alt attribute here, because there are people who may have vision impairment that are surfing the internet. Now you might be chuckling, oh, what are blind people doing on the internet? Blind people can surf the internet, guy. Okay? If you weren't aware of that, you are now. And by including the alt text for your images, their screen reader will oftentimes read that text to them so they know what that's a picture of. So, you know, be courteous to our otherly abled individuals who may be visiting your website. Include the alt text. Don't skip it. It might seem like it's not necessary, but it does do something. So be sure to include it. Height you can leave off. Width you should keep so that you have at least one of those. And usually the width is the more important of the two. But always include the alt text on your images. So, again, image tag, self-closing. So there is no separate, /image. You'll never see this nonsense. You might see this nonsense where there's a close slash at the end of the image tag like what I do. It's not necessary. You don't have to have that there. That's fully legal. That's completely acceptable behavior as well. So if you think it looks cleaner without that, go ahead and, omit that last slash if you want. I include mine because, again, it's just a reminder that, hey, I don't need a closing tag here. But the attribute that needs to point to the file is going to be the src. The value you give it is going to be the path to that file. If it's an image you have on your server in a folder, the path can be relative. So we don't have to include a domain name. We just went with the file name / and then, or we went with the folder name / file name and extension. I don't know that extensions are always needed. Let's test that out. Used to be that we always needed the extension. Did I close Chrome? No. Nope. Nope. See, here we got the alternate text because I took the file extension off of the end of that. So we do want to include the file extension. Acceptable file formats: PNG, SVG, JPG, GIF. And yes, I say GIF, not GIF, because it's graphic image file, not, graphic image file. I know the creator is like, no, it's GIF. No, it's GIF, okay? That's what the letters are for. Graphic is the first word. So, it's a hard G, alright? Anyone who wants to say different, fight me. I don't care. But that's how you do images. Now, you might be like, well, how do I center it? How do I do this? How do I give it a border? How do I make it a link and, make it not have a border when it is a link? Because if you put a the anchor with the href tag around the image, you basically turn it into a clickable button that will go somewhere. But it will also put a blue border around it to indicate that it is a link. And yes, you can remove that border so that it doesn't have a blue border around it. It's just an image you can click on and it takes you somewhere. We'll get into all that, though, some other time. This was our brief primer on how to do things in HTML. Very basic, very simple, but now you know. Next time we will get into CSS, but we're also going to include a couple of tags we haven't talked about. And the reason why we haven't talked about them is because they don't really do much until you get to CSS. Okay? Once you get into CSS, this bad boy and to a lesser extent this one as well, these tags become all kinds of fun. These are what's known as container tags. The div tag is a block element, much like our headings are block elements. You remember how those they expand from edge to edge, and the next element in our file shows up immediately underneath them. Divs are kind of a default basic container element. All right, it's not a paragraph, but you can put paragraphs in it. It's not a heading, but you can put headings in it. You can set a different background for it, so it becomes a section of the web page that is offset from the rest of the web page and denoted by the fact that it has a different colored background, that kind of thing. But we'll learn about all of that when we get to CSS, because that's where those two tags really shine. Span is like our inline element, like our, how our anchor tag, our link tag here, the tag that turns text into a link. The words are just in line with the other words on the page. Yeah. If we use span, we can basically select a chunk of text or, you know, or something and just apply certain styles to that specific uh, bit rather than it being a whole container on the page that's being changed. So, those are the differences there. And again, we'll get into that when we get into CSS. That's going to be a much longer discussion because there's a lot to go over when it comes to CSS. Um, the div tag becomes very vital when setting up the layouts for our web pages. And um, we have to adopt a philosophy when it comes to the layouts of our web pages because our web page is going to be viewed by multiple different devices. How do we make our web page look good in all scenarios? Especially considering if you're like me and you're on a desktop computer, you're in landscape mode. But most people browsing from their phone are going to be in portrait mode. Well, hate to break it to y'all, but it doesn't just automatically translate in 100% of the cases. All right? So, we're going to want to talk about that. We're going to want to talk about how to make your layouts adapt to the device the user is using. How to make text a little bit larger for the larger windows, a little bit smaller but still readable for the smaller windows. How to do the spacing just slightly different so that you can get more room out of the smaller screens and make better use of all of the room you have on the larger screens without it looking like a total mess. We'll get into that though with CSS. This has been my basic primer on HTML. I feel like we've covered most everything. Oh, the order in which you close your tags is important. Please note, our head open and close encapsulates all of the stuff here, because all of the stuff here is within the head of our document. Notice the body tag open and close here and all of the content of our page is between those two tags. That's called nesting. Okay? Nesting. It's important. You want to open and close. You want to close in the opposite order that you open. So, like here, we open a paragraph, we open an anchor tag, we close the anchor tag, we close the paragraph. Okay? That's important. That's to ensure that our anchor tag stays fully nested within the element that it's created in. Would we get away with closing our anchor tag after this? Probably. Our web browser would just make everything between those two tags a clickable link, but it's also bad form, looks sloppy, looks absolutely terrible. Don't do it. Proper use of nesting: you open, close, close. All right? Open, close, close. Always close the first one you opened last. Our HTML, first one open, last one closed. Head, second one open, closed after all of this other stuff is closed. All the stuff that's within, that comes right after our opening head tag. We close the head. Then we open the body. We include all of our content. We close all of our content. and then we close the body, and then we close the HTML. That order is important. Okay? If something's going wrong on your page and you can't figure out what it is, it's probably that. It's probably that. One thing I've seen that really helps with that kind of stuff, especially if you're a new coder, like take this line for example, where we have all of these different anchor tags. If you go ahead and put your opening tag on one line, the internal content on the next line, and the closing tag after that, and then indent the content, you will see where your elements begin and end. It becomes a bit clearer. All right? So like here, we start a paragraph. We have some content. No big deal. We start a link. We have some content within that link. We close that link. We start a new link. We have some content in that link, and then we close that link. We start another link. We have some content in that link. We close that link, and then we close the paragraph. This image that we included down here, not part of that paragraph. That is its own thing. This div, its own thing. This span, its own thing. They're part of the body, though. They're contained between the open and close of the body tag. So, if you're having problems with your code, double check that you're opening and closing things in the correct order. Okay? Remember, open 1, open 2, close 1. You close them in the reverse order that you open them. It's like a Russian nesting doll. I know, Russia, ooh, I'm not trying to get political here, but you know how the bigger one opens to reveal the little one? If you close the big one without closing the little one, you're not going to get the little one's lid back on properly until you reopen the big one to fit it in there. They have to fit inside of each other, okay? Same concept. So, that's your basic HTML. Join us next week, I think. We'll be doing CSS. But we'll be back at the normal time of like 10 a.m. for our coding sessions, I think. I have to check my kid's schedule. The reason we're so late this evening is because he had to do things later this evening he got out of school early, so I wasn't sure if that would cut into my time. Looking at my time now, I probably could have gotten away with doing a session early this morning, but I really didn't know if this would run over things or not. So, if you have questions, join the Discord. Ask them there. I'll be happy to answer them. Otherwise, catch me next week, 10 a.m. every Wednesday. We do these coding sessions, and for the next couple of weeks anyway, we're doing front-end development. Then we'll probably drop back in on our Python for a little bit, and then we'll get back into web development for back-end with some PHP and such. That's all coming in the future. There'll be content. It'll be beautiful. Trust me. What else do we have going on? Tomorrow, Thursday, we're playing Super Metroid on the Nintendo Switch online service. The Virtual Console. Why? Because I don't have a Super Nintendo. And we're still working our way through the Metroid franchise. Friday, Breath of the Wild. We still have to complete the Hyrule Compendium. We're almost done, though. We've done all the Korok Seeds, all the quests, all the side quests, got all of the shrines. Everything you can think of has been done. For the most part, we just have to complete the Hyrule Compendium. I think I might have a few pieces of armor to upgrade still, because I haven't been hunting star fragments like I know I should. But, like, y'all don't want to see me farm for hours and hours. Or maybe you do. I don't know. I don't know your life. I'm not judging. Saturday, public domain horror movie at midnight. So, Sunday, for probably a great majority of you. Um, and then Monday, we're back to playing Metroid 2 for the Game Boy. Because we're working our way through that one. If you want to see how that's going so far, check out the VOD from Monday. And honestly, I think it's going quite well. Tuesday is a podcast. I sit down with my friend Zeph Hatter and we talk about ridiculous, crazy stuff people believe in and may have encountered and seen, and the weirdest stuff you can find on Wikipedia. If you have a weird story, hop in the Discord and tell me about it. Um, yeah, the Discord's basically there to interact with me, either for coding questions or this this bit of this bit of nonsense where you tell me ghost stories and I talk about them on my podcast. So either or, I'm fine with either or. Anyway, I do thank you all for joining me. Hope you found this informative and simplified, and hopefully not nearly as complicated as a lot of tutorials out there can be. Tags we didn't get into, like I said, link tag where we link the style sheet in the head of our HTML document, but we'll do that when we get to CSS so you can see how you attach your cascading style sheet to your HTML document. I want that to be fresh in your mind where that link is coming from. Just like you don't see the JavaScript being linked to in the head of our HTML document here, because when we get to JavaScript, we'll take care of that. Also, our div and span. Not dealing with those today because those are better talked about when we get to CSS and we actually can make some use of them. For now, though, image, paragraph, anchor, also known as links, hyperlinks, headings, break and return, body, head, meta tags, title, the HTML tag, and the doc type. All of those are important. All of those are all you really need to know to get started on your journey into web development. Join us next time, and we'll go a bit further. We'll get to where it gets really interesting. I promise. Till then, you have yourselves a wonderful evening. Have a good one.